another episode of the Cozy Corner of Cinema. If you're hearing a buzzing noise in the background, I do apologize. I think the microphone might be picking it up a little bit, but that is the air conditioner that is running just for a bit in the background because it is quite hot today and I need to bring the temperature down in this room temporarily. Anyways, this is episode number 166, being recorded on Thursday, June 5th, 2025 at 5:16 p.m. It's a beautiful day outside, but it's a humid day. We have definitely gone past any sort of remnant of the winter days, any sort of remnants, I should say, behind us. We are now into the summer season and the summer mentality. This is a great time of the year for walks outside, reading outside, going out and getting inspired in our work. And of course, for films, westerns come to mind. Many great westerns, and of course, films set in the Australian outback. I'm thinking about films like Wake and Fright by Ted Ketchoff and Walkabout by Nicholas Roeg. I'm sorry, did I say Ted Kotcheff? I always get the name mixed up there. Films that really kind of make you really feel the heat and the what I was talking about with the Surfer is the heat is so oppressive. It's like a character being trapped in an open prison. It's sort of like this scorching sun that's just constantly beating down on you and you can't escape it. And these are all great films to watch, especially at this time of the year. And actually I see on the temperature that it is already dropping, so that's wonderful. So that's just really cool, man. So maybe if it drops fast enough, I can turn this off before the end of the episode, but we shall see. But yeah, of course, many westerns come to mind. Even yesterday, I watched Steve McQueen's second to last film, Tom Horn, from 1980. And it's a pretty good film, actually. Not too bad. Directed by William Wiard. W-I-A-R-D. I don't know if it's Wired or Weird. And I am not familiar with his filmography. Deadly Lessons, This House Possessed, Fantasies. I'm not familiar with these films, but Tom Horn, pretty good film. Not bad. It's a great kind of... I don't... Now... Well, I'm not even going to talk about it, because I have other films I want to talk about, so let's just put that off to the side. Let's talk about another William. Let's talk about William Friedkin. I am just about finished with his autobiography that came out in, I believe, 2013, called The Friedkin Connection, a memoir. This was a gift by an acquaintance. Yes, February 2013, and goes over his starts, working on, I guess his first real success. His first documentary, a short film that I am blanking on the name of right now, but don't you worry, I'm going to get that name up for you right now. And the name of that, it's The People versus Someone. Of course, IMDb does not want to cooperate. Paul Crump. The People versus Paul Crump, 1962. Him having trouble kind of finding his footing, putting in his more kind of directorial sort of decisions and stamps on these early documentaries, but the news station or the TV station, they want something a bit more traditional. Anyways, becomes a feature filmmaker, almost right out of the gate. He has a couple hiccups early on, but I would say, when I say right out of the gate, I mean within the first 5 years, because his first feature film was The Birthday Party. I'm sorry, that's incorrect. His first feature film was Good Times from 1967, about with Sonny and Cher, and then he does The Birthday Party, based on the story by Harold Pinter, or the play, I should say, or maybe it wasn't based off play. I think Harold Pinter just actually wrote the film, so I may be incorrect there. Anyways, first huge success comes with The French Connection, of course, in 1971, one of the seminal films that is always in the conversation of the new wave of American cinema, new wave of Hollywood American cinema. And then, of course, The Exorcist. He's on the upward climb, and then just as high as he climbs, how low he goes, and in terms of his, his, sort of reputation. Where regardless of the quality of the films are not reaching the audiences that they would have in the '70s, and it's a fascinating look into William Friedkin, who is a really kind of no nonsense director. He is. I recommend highly looking up interviews with William Friedkin. He's a very intentionally funny guy. Some of the stories that he tells are just great. Two of my favorites, which I'll let you watch on your own, is when he talks about working with method actors, working with someone like Tommy Lee Jones versus Nick Nolte or Benicio del Toro, and the also another great one is when somebody asked him if he had seen any of the Exorcist sequels, which, funnily enough, you have William Peter Blatty, who is the author of the book, goes on to direct The Exorcist 3, and then is eventually released in a director's cut known as Legion. And The Exorcist 3 is a pretty good film. I'm not quite on the love that I think a lot of people have for it, but it's definitely a solid film nonetheless. Great performances all around. George C. Scott, Brad Dourif. It's a chilling film. Even The Exorcist 2, or just Exorcist 2 the Heretic, it's a bizarre film, and it feels like it has absolutely no connection to the first one, but it has a strange kind of hallucinogenic, almost acid trip at times, where, you really got to question how much from the Bible they're really taking from any of this, because it just gets so ridiculous. It gets so out there. But it's a strange film in its own right that I think is actually very interesting. I think it's a midnight film to watch late at night when you are not, you watch some of the Italian horror films, man, and it's like that nightmare logic where you watch like House by the Cemetery, and you're not concerned about a traditional ABC structural narrative. You're not really concerned if things completely make sense. You're just kind of on board for the ride. And that's kind of how I feel about The Exorcist too. I haven't seen it in a couple of years. I can't imagine it's getting, I can't imagine I'm gonna come around and saying this is a great film. I very well may, but I don't know. But actually, I think I can turn this AC off right now. Let me turn that off. See if you can hear that. It looks silent now. Great. But yeah, actually, funnily enough, I look over on my shelf and I have a copy. I just got to put these films away of films I got recently of To Live and Die in L.A. on 4K from Kino Lorber. That was from 1985. And Jade, released by Vinegar Syndrome from 1995. To Live and Die in L.A. is, I think, one of his most underappreciated films in terms of how strong it is. I was, in regards of, in the context of this book, I did recently go back and watch Cruising. Cruising 1980, a very controversial film, starring Al Pacino. It's got a great cast, actually. Al Pacino, Paul Sorvino, Joe Spinell's in the film, the great Joe Spinell, Karen Allen, Ed O'Neill's a small part, James Remar, Barton Heyman. It's a really good cast, and the film is, I'm not quite on I don't think I've totally quite warmed up to it yet. I'm kind of still at the same place I was the first time, which is, I think it's really, there's a lot of really interesting things about the film. I think because it's about basically, there's a killer going around, and he's targeting certain gay men who look a certain way, and in really horrific deaths. And Al Pacino is sent undercover to kind of not necessarily infiltrate. Well, I guess you could say infiltrate the underground kind of S&M scene of the 1980s, the early 1980s, because this came out in '80, so I imagine it's filmed in '79. But the underground gay kind of S&M scene. And having to find out the killer. But it's a really well shot film. I loved all the stuff underground and in the underground S&M clubs. You see when Al Pacino's walking around, he sees just all these different sex acts going on, and even for an R, it still pushes it quite a bit. And it's interesting the way that Friedkin talks about it in his book, how he intentionally shot some more gay sex that would intentionally get him an NC-17 or an X, I would say at the time. So all he had to do was just take that footage out, and then boom, you have an R right there. And even for an R, it still is, I think just the sight of some of it is still pretty shocking in a big kind of film like this, especially somebody like Al Pacino, and then you have some really kind of wild sort of sex acts going on. Karen Allen's really good in the film. I think she's just a really underrated actress in general, man. She's one that I think even people talk about Raiders of the Lost Ark. I don't think they talk about how strong her performance that she is, which is it's crazy. That's such a big film. That's like a staple of kind of film and pop culture, and I feel like she's still not kind of talked about it in the same conversation as Harrison Ford in that film. I think they both give really solid performances, different kinds of performances. I'm not saying that I'm not like, why aren't they talking about her like Harrison Ford? Because obviously the character in that is just so perfect. But even still, I think the film really for me just kind of meanders a bit too much. The first half it felt kind of aimless again, where I'm like sitting there going like, man, I really don't know what his plan is to kind of find this guy, and it seems like he doesn't really know either. And then the conclusion of the film, I never was able to kind of get with. I'm like, I don't know what we're going for here. I mean, I know what we're going for, but I don't know what this feels so half baked. And it's actually, and of course I won't spoil it, but in the book, Friedkin sort of says that he came to the reveal through the editing, and apparently Pacino was very unhappy about that. Because it messed with his performance watching the film then, and he didn't do any press. He didn't talk about the film. Friedkin says he hasn't talked about the film since, and I don't know if that's true or not. But I mean, you can see where they're both coming from. Ultimately, I'm trying to remember. I think no, wait a minute, never, because Richard Gere was originally in the Pacino role for this film, because Al Pacino came to him with Born on the Fourth of July, and Friedkin didn't do it, and of course Oliver Stone would go on to direct that with Tom Cruise, and that was post Platoon, and especially because Oliver Stone was actually in Vietnam, I think, and Friedkin says this as well, because he was actually there. He has a better perspective on, a Vietnam vet kind of coming home and sort of the trauma that comes with it, and sort of feeling like being your country kind of turned its back to you. And it's a very interesting film as well. I think a lot of people know about Born on the 4th of July, but. Yeah, Cruising's one that I think I liked. I mean, the production of this, it was so chaotic. Before they were even filming, I mean, I think people probably know about the production, but in case they don't, people were saying the film was homophobic. They said that this was going to be like a punching bag for a lot of like gay people in New York who already kind of felt marginalized, and they thought the film was sort of like targeting them and saying that this is like a symptom of gay life, and it's not that at all. And William Friedkin, says that was never his intention. And watching the film now, I mean, I think it's very easy to see. You watch the film, and I never get that sense at all. I get it. Never get the sense of like, well, this is like the gay life right here. This is just a subculture of gay life in New York. But I guess you can understand where they're coming from, because they are saying, even at this time, not being as represented on film, and then you have a big film like this showing something seedy. And, for the time, I see where they're coming from, but I do think that is something that even goes on now, where people kind of have preconceived notions about a film or about a piece of media without even seeing it. People sort of, even now, you hear just kind of ridiculous things about something like Lolita, for example, where it's like they don't actually watch the film or read the book. They just hear the plot and they go, oh, this film is advocating this, and it's just like, man, what are you even doing? And something like Lolita is just so brilliant, and it's just so not even complex, just so interesting to follow a character like that. And to me, I think that might be actually maybe Kubrick's most, which is ridiculous to say an underrated film of Kubrick, because they're all so talked about and known. I would say even more so than something like Killer's Kiss, because I think Lolita is up there as one of his very, very best films, and this is masterpiece after masterpiece. But I never hear it in the conversation of when people immediately talk about his best films, or they talk about his best films, immediately comes to mind 2001, The Shining, Clockwork Orange, and all three of those brilliant films. But to me, I'm always thinking like Lolita's in that conversation. That's such a brilliant film. But yeah, Cruising is an interesting film as well. Yeah, I'm not still maybe not quite on board with it, but it's watching it now with that context in the book is really exceptional. And Friedkin's a filmmaker who I think he's had ups and downs, but I don't think I've like seen a film of his that I was like, man, that was really bad. I mean, I haven't seen Jade, which apparently is pretty rough. Friedkin himself says it's not it financially didn't do well, critically it didn't do well, and even when it got announced, people were saying that this was not one of Friedkin's best films. But I'm interested to watch that for context. I've seen most of his films. There's only a couple of them I haven't seen, including Jade, Rampage, Blue Chips, Rules of Engagement. And his last one, the documentary, The Devil and Father Amorth. But it's funny how, like, his last feature, it's sort of like talked about as one of his best, which is Killer Joe from 2011, which is just such an exceptional film. It's just one of the great contemporary films. It's pitch black comedy because the situation is just so absurd, and you have all these characters who are all, would be the villain in any other movie, but the fact they're all together and it's like, and they're all just out to get one another. It's so well done. I think that's Matthew McConaughey's, I don't even want to say his strongest performance, because I mean, trying to judge one performance over another is so different. I mean, his performance in like Interstellar, I think, is so well done, but then Killer Joe is so frightening but charismatic, and there's this weird kind of like undercurrent of just like really like evil waiting to kind of simmer that it feels like it's kind of being buried. But Killer Joe is such a incredible film. It's you have Matthew McConaughey, Emile Hirsch, Gina Gershon, Thomas Hayden Church, Juno Temple, and it's just it's one of these films where I think kind of even when it came out, the sort of like the big scene in the final act, I think kind of overshadowed the rest of the film, in terms of its quality. Or everyone's like, oh, this crazy scene in the third act got an NC-17. But the film is so manic, and the film is so what's the word I want to say? You don't see things unpredictable. It's been a long day. I just got home from work. Bear with me, guys. But that it makes for when you get to that scene, it's like, man, I could see this character doing something. And of course, Bug as well from 2006. I think is a really, really great film. I'm trying to remember Ashley Judd. Michael Shannon. I'm trying to remember who was in that film. It was primarily those two. Harriet Connick Jr., Lynn Collins. And it's a great film as well. Both Bug and Killer Joe almost feel like plays in a way, because there's very few sets in either of the films, especially like the end, the last act of both Bug and Killer Joe feels like when you have the characters kind of at this one setting, kind of putting everything out there, it feels like a play. It feels like you could see this on stage, and it's so well done. I think Bug again, it's one of like the best horror films of the 21st century. Maybe like horror, psychological thriller. I mean, people kind of draw lines wherever. I have acquaintances say that Cruising's a horror movie. Cruising's never been a horror movie to me. Not I don't get that, but if people want to call it a horror movie, I'm not losing sleep over it. Stuff like that. I'm like, if it gets people to see the film, that's all I care about, But it's a solid book, man. William Friedkin, he's just one of these filmmakers. It's interesting where, having recently finished up John Schlesinger's filmography, his feature filmography, I did also watch Cold Comfort Farm, which was a TV movie, I believe, but it did also get a theatrical release in America, to my knowledge. But there is that gradual sort of, I don't want to say decline in a negative way, but in terms of quality, I think because, when you're doing films for so many decades, 9 times out of 10, I think there is going to be an eventual, maybe not even 9 times out of 10, but there's going to be at some point where you really start to kind of go on a downward slope. And you get some not so great films like The Innocent and Pacific Heights, and I think the next best thing is a pretty rough film, next is Final Film. And but I'm able to appreciate that film more with context after reading the biography on him and how sick he was during the making of it. But Friedkin as well. I mean, he's had dips, but I don't think he's ever had anything where I'm like, man, that's really bad. I mean, the fact that he can come back up and do not only Bug but Killer Joe as well is something to really kind of be admired. And I haven't seen. Actually, funny. I said earlier in the episode I've seen most of it, but now I'm thinking about I've probably seen half because I'm thinking I haven't seen his. I haven't seen Good Times, and I haven't seen The Birthday Party. I have seen The Night They Raided Minsky's, and I think that's a really good film. I don't remember if I've seen Boys in the Band. I'm not going to say if I have or haven't, because I truly don't remember. But if I don't remember it, then maybe I can just chalk it up to I didn't see it. I really don't know. Maybe I did, but I don't remember anything about it. But just one of the great filmmakers. I mean, just talk about, one of just, you have all of these just exceptional filmmakers coming out around this time doing different kinds of films. The Friedkins and Bogdanovich and Coppola all doing distinctly their own thing, and just this sort of melting pot of really, really incredible films coming out in such a period of time. And the film also, and the book also talks about kind of what I talked about before with Sorcerer, sort of why that film didn't do well when it was released. Eventually, kind of becoming a cult film, and I think now recognized as one of not only one of Friedkin's best, but I think one of the great American films. Even though it's funny, it's in South America, I believe it was, or I forgot where it actually played. South America, or was it Cuba? I don't remember, but one of the great films, I would just say, of the 20th century, and one of the great masterpieces. And the film comes out, and it just has this really tough production. It gets terrible reviews when it comes out. And it comes out a week after Star Wars, so that it gets pretty much buried by that. And sort of the wave of the nihilistic sort of downbeat Hollywood, American Hollywood films have been taken over by big blockbusters and big films that are going for something a bit more optimistic. And that's why I love when Tarantino talks about a film like Rocky, because I remember I watched I may have mentioned before, I watched a documentary about Alan J. Pakula. Or Pakula. I've heard the name pronounced both ways. Pakula sounds like Dracula, man, and I don't know if that's right. But it's funny. I was laughing. I think I laughed out loud in that documentary. They talk about when All the President's Men didn't win Best Picture, and Rocky won, and they're like, "Oh, Rocky is such a lower film, and it's such a shame." And I'm laughing. I'm like, man, Tarantino kind of put it so succinctly, sort of like, we're at a point, man. Above all else, whether you like the film or not, whether you like All the President's Men more or not, Rocky was the only one of these films, man, that wasn't downbeat. And when I say downbeat, man, I don't mean like it's some like musical where it's like we're doing Dr. Dolittle, and it's like it was such a breath of fresh air to see that film come out, and also the fact that it's really good. I mean, it'd be one of these things if it was like an upbeat film and it wasn't very good. I think, Rocky is just a total masterpiece, whether or not you like it or more or less than, All the President's Men or Network or Taxi Driver. Yeah, that's your prerogative, man. I'm not saying any of that. You're entitled to your opinion. I'm just saying that it's not surprising that it won. I think it's a brilliant film, and I think it deserves that. But it's also a change of the time in Hollywood, man, because Rocky is what, 76, 77? Yeah, 76, and Sorcerer is 77, and it just makes sense. Sorcerer is a brilliant film too, but you even see that with Friedkin's next film, The Brink's Job, in 78, which is a more kind of lighthearted comedy heist film, which is also actually pretty good too. You got that's another great cast: Peter Falk, Peter Boyle, Warren Oates, Paul Sorvino, Gina Rollins. There you go. I got Peter Falk and Gina Rollins from Cassavetes films there. Man, it's just it's not a great film, but it's a cool film that I think is also not really brought up a whole lot in Friedkin's sort of filmography. It comes out after Sorcerer, comes out before Cruising, both of which I think are more talked about. But I definitely want to go see. I definitely want to watch the missing sort of pieces that I haven't seen. Rampage, and I don't think he talked about The Guardian in his book. I don't even know what this is, honestly. I never even heard of this film, and he didn't mention it in the book. A young couple with a newborn son don't realize their new nanny is a magical druid sacrificing infants to an evil tree. That doesn't sound like a fun time at all. But yeah, he didn't even talk about this in the book, so this is news to me, man. But yeah, so it's great. You know, you read these books, these biographies, these autobiographies, these making of books. You know, they give you a whole new context to the film. Even going back to something like John Schlesinger, where I'm like, man, he does. You know, I'm not like, you know, I'm like, man, he does like Honky Tonk Freeway. That's so different than what he's doing with like, you know, these really great dramas like Midnight Cowboy or Sunday Bloody Sunday. And then you read about the production in the book and you see what he's trying to go for, and you're like, oh, all right, man, I get it. You know, and I don't think Honky Tonk Freeway is a great film or anything like that, but I'm like, all right, in the context, I'm able to appreciate it more. And even something like Cruising, which I may still not be crazy about, I'm able to, on this past viewing, watch it with that context, watch it with that appreciation, where I think now so many people, they see a film that they don't like, it's like, oh, this film sucks. It's like, you know, hey, man, you know, I was talking to somebody recently, and we were having a fun kind of back and forth, but, you know, they were talking about, well, because there's a big recent movie that came out a couple months ago, you know, big kind of critical film. You know, everybody seems to love it. I wasn't a fan of it, but that's fine. I'm not, you know, I'm not telling like, oh, what the hell, you like that film? I really don't care what you like, whatever. But they were like, man, you didn't like this film, but you know, you like this other film that's this cheap kind of '80s movie, and you know, it has bad reviews and it's a dumb movie. And I'm like, man, you can't even compare the two, because you're just comparing a film that, you know, you can compare any two films. You can say, oh, you didn't like, you know, I don't know, you don't like The Godfather, but you like, I don't know, video violence. It's like, well, what the hell do they even have to do with each other, man? They're both movies. All right, you got that. I don't know what to tell you there, man. You know, it's just ridiculous. But yeah, no, it's all about just a greater because you know with those films, I'm like, okay, I can see what this $100+ million movie is doing, and it doesn't work for me. You have all this equipment, you have all these these good actors, and you have all this great locations, and it just does nothing for me. I'm just like, man, the script is just so poor, and this pacing is just so bad. And this other film where I'm like, okay, well the budget's not very high, and I see it. These are all kind of amateur actors, so or at least new actors, I should first time actors. So it's like, okay, I'm comparing my two different wavelengths. You can't even compare them. I'm not gonna go watch the new Karate Kid and be like, oh man, well I thought this SOV movie was way better. It's like, what the hell are you even comparing them for, man? Which I did see the new Karate Kid, by the way, and it wasn't bad. It was actually okay. I'm pretty middle of the road on it. It's not great. It's not even very good. Some of the writing's pretty rough. But the stuff with Jackie Chan and Ralph Macchio is just solid. And even the new kid, I don't know that actor's name, but he's good. He's a good kind of charismatic lead. The fight scenes were really well directed. Yeah, it's not bad. It was a fun movie. But anyways, yeah. So hey, man, just when you're watching these films, just keep the context in mind. The films are more than just they're great or they suck. It's like, well, why do you think this is great? Why do you think this sucks? Even if it's unpopular, even if you're like, man, I think The Godfather is the worst movie ever made. It's like, oh man, that's a wild take, but I want to hear what you got to say about it, or I want to hear your reasoning behind it. Why do you think it's the worst movie ever made? Let's talk about it. Let's have a dang conversation. But anyways, man, that's all I got for this one. Hey man, you guys take care. It's beautiful out. Use the days wisely. Use your time wisely, and just soak it all in, man. Soak in the sun. And the joy of life, man. It's just so good. And it's just so great to be waking up every day and be blessed with just being here. It's just so wonderful. You definitely don't want to be taking advantage of that. But that's all I got, guys. So take care, and until next time.